we've got this announcement today. It's about electric vehicles. Labor's been here before. It was unsuccessful in 2019. Do you see this as being any different?
Well, clearly it is, and you're making that point to him, weren't you, Pete? I mean, there's no target here. It's just a policy about tax breaks. I mean, could you be any smaller target than these guys?
Yeah. I mean,
talk about going from one extreme to the other.
Well, the issue is that you're going to have charging stations and all of that you're going to have to deal with too. I'm not sure what the details are around that, but I mean, electric vehicles are dear. They're still dear, even with the tax breaks.
And he says it's about scale to you, doesn't he? So eventually, like solar panels, they get cheaper.
Yeah.
Probably true. I noticed the New South Wales government's considering a tax on them, so that probably doesn't help.
What do you make of not just the plan today, but the plans out yesterday, $15 billion for manufacturing? Can this kind of stuff work?
Well, I just think that's almost a rip-off of his policy as infrastructure minister when Kevin Rudd was elected, of $20 billion rather than 15 for infrastructure and a Building Australia fund. And you look at his other policy, Jobs and Skills Australia, that's like how he set up Infrastructure Australia.
Yeah.
It's all a bit motherhood, really. I mean, I do wonder what they're going to do on negative gearing. I think that's a big question because clearly housing affordability in Sydney and Melbourne is out of control. Yeah. Something needs to be done about it.
What do you do,
if you grandfather it...
Demand's demand, though.
Well,
people are willing to pay.
What about people who are buying like 10 or 20 proproperties and getting a tax break out of it?
Yeah, true.
I mean, that doesn't sound appropriate. And that's the system we have at the moment. We've got people, you know, obviously more entrepreneurial and better with money than me, who end up just making a living out of buying 10 properties.
Flipping them.
So at the very least, you could have a policy which says you can only negative gear one property. If you don't do that, you could just ban it, but grandfather it. That was their problem with franking credits. They never grandfathered it.
Yeah.
But, you know, knowing these guys, have done all the research on that and they'll be announcing it last minute so they can't get smashed on it for a year because Scott Morrison goes pretty small target as well, you might have noticed.
Yeah, yeah. What about vaccines? The stoush between the feds and the states at the moment, they're blaming each other. Who is to blame here?
Well, good question.
Is it everybody?
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
I think you just answered your own question, so what am I supposed to say now? But basically,
the left arm's not talking to the right arm.
Look, I do find it interesting that the states have so little confidence they'll get the second dose off the feds that they're holding some back. I think that's a really interesting dynamic, and it speaks to the fact that there's massive mistrust in our federation at the moment, despite this national cabinet idea. And it also, I've been saying for a long time the feds don't do service delivery well. Jane Holton said it in an interview with me for Sunday Agenda last week. She'd know, she's a former head of the Department of Health and Finance. So I think we're seeing that again. Look, the government are pretty confident that with the domestic production now, things will really start get rolling. I'd say that I was after that data the Daily Telegraph had today on only half the doses are going out. I wasn't given it, unfortunately, but I would say the feds have distributed that to show that it's the states that are the problem. I think both are the problem. He promised 4 million by the end of March. We're at 600,000, Scott Morrison.